My vote counts has written to President Cyril Ramaphosa asking him to prevent further delays in the implementation of the Political Party Funding Act. The act was signed into law in January. The organization says disclosing party funders is essential for transparency. Well, for more on this, we join now from our Cape Town studios by Zahira Grimwood from My Vote Counts. Zahira, good morning and thank you very much. I see that you've decided as My Vote Counts that any further delays are not good for transparency. Have you been able to establish what, in fact, has delayed the implementation of this act, which was enacted by the President in January?
So this press statement that we released yesterday is in specifically relation to an article that was published in the Mail and Guardian on the 10th of May, where statements were made by the DA's CEO, Paul Bowie, and Paul Mashatile, the Treasury General of the ANC, where they stated that they'd request that the act be reviewed in Parliament once again for reasons that we believe are deceptive and misleading. If the act is taken back to Parliament, we would be going many steps back, and we are requesting that the President do not act upon their statements because he has the powers now to make sure that it's promulgated and implemented. And the reasons that the DA and the ANC has put forward for the supposed need for the Act to be taken back to Parliament is they've argued that the Act has affected political parties' abilities to raise funding for their election campaigns. However, we've seen that there's been reports that the ANC has spent around 1 billion rand in their election campaign. So statements made on the fact that they've struggled to raise funding for T-shirts that they've distributed to members, I think is really bizarre. They've been able to accumulate so much private funding to have a large footprint in their campaigns, and the DA reportedly has spent around 600 million rand in their campaign. So we've alerted the President to the incorrect reasoning that these officials have put forward, and we've asked him to exercise his agency as a President to allow for the IEC to take its course with the process, whereby it's stated that it would invite the public to make oral submissions, and if he's going to allow for it to go back to Parliament, that is explicitly showing that there's an intention to delay this process.
Now, what about the argument by the smaller parties to say, because I've seen some reports that, for instance, a party like the UDM has come out in public to say, oh, we got so much money, we have no issue in revealing how much we got for this election. But other minority parties might feel that moving quickly on this party funding act might also affect their ability to raise funds. How about that argument?
So our argument is that if the Act was implemented, it would actually create a more fair playing field for smaller political parties, and smaller political parties have supported the Act being implemented because what it would actually do is allow for more public funding to be allocated to smaller parties and slightly reduce the amount of public funding that's allocated to bigger political parties. The DA and the ANC has also made these statements of the supposed decline in funding for smaller parties without giving any evidence or records showing any notable decline. And we have also seen the emergence of smaller parties who have gained seats in Parliament over a much smaller period. Say, for example, Good and the ATM, and where Good, for example, campaigned over 4 months. So as these officials have they've implied that the Act has led to the demise of certain smaller parties, which is not true, because we can see that new parties who would have to solely rely on private funding were able to have an impact.
Now, what next then? What should happen next? The new 6th Parliament is being sworn in today, and it will also elect the new president, likely to be Cyril Ramaphosa, who's of course promised all of us a new dawn. So what next for you in terms, you've now written a letter to the president. What are the next steps you're going to take to make sure that you prevent this review that the ANC and the DA want, and you make sure the president effects the promulgation and the implementation of the Act?
So along with other civil society organizations today, including Ahmed Cathadra, who've organized a picket, we are going to picket outside of Parliament and hand over a memorandum to Parliament to request that the Party Funding Act be implemented immediately. But we've also requested that the President respond within by an end of next week. And if there's no decisive action taken this year, we will then be forced to go back to court if needs be.
So you said your picket is going to be today outside Parliament? Did I get you correctly?
Yes. Yes, between 8 and 10 a.m. there will be a picket outside of Parliament. We will be handing over a memorandum to Parliament where we, civil society organizations collectively have stated that we feel that the Fifth Parliament has delivered poorly when it comes to service delivery, accountability and transparency. And one of the requests that are placed in the memorandum is for the Party Funding Act to be implemented immediately.
Thank you very much. Zahira Grimwood there from My Vote Counts. Well,